Plus, there's something special about looking at the top of your tank and seeing a figure you painted versus something that you bought. Hey guys, welcome back to Motion RC. I'm your product specialist, Wesley, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different here. Guys that used to follow me over on my previous channel know that I used to love to paint and airbrush weather models. And what I want to show you today is how to actually do a full repaint on one of our little hang-along drivers for your tanks. You know, there's a lot of these beautiful tanks available here at Motion RC. And something you can have a lot of fun with is weathering them and painting them up and doing something a little different. So what we're gonna do today is take one of our plain Jane little green soldiers and turn it into something that's really beautiful and really complements a fully weathered tank like the one you see here in front of us. Now, of course, we're doing a US soldier today that's gonna go a lot better with our Sherman, but I'm hoping in the next few weeks to maybe do a repaint on the Sherman for you guys. It'll be a lot of fun. Now, some of the products we're going to use today come from our line of modeling products like the Benchcraft Airbrush you see here beside us. If you haven't checked it out, I actually did some airbrushing with James a while back on the channel. So yeah, I just have our standard little airbrush kit here. Very useful, very hobby grade, but at a good price to get into this with. The other thing you need is some paint. Now, a lot of people are not going to like this, but I tell you, cheap is good paint too. Now, I have a little bit of a swath of everything out here. I have some Citadel's Army Painter paint. I have some Tamiya paint. I actually ordered this airbrush color stuff. This is really cheap pre-made airbrush paint. But at the end of the day, you can do everything you're gonna see in this with good old Apple Barrel or Americana from Walmart or any of the big box stores. This stuff is about 50 cents a tube and does all the painting you need as long as you learn to control it. And I'm gonna try and show you a little of that today. We're gonna be painting with this. I'm gonna mix some of this all in here too and just kind of show you the stuff that I really like and I think is worth spending the extra money on. But basic colors, and go get you some of this cheap paint. You're gonna have a great time with it. So anyway, let's get out on the table. And what I wanna show you first is what's called a zenithal prime. This is how I start almost every model that I'm gonna paint. If it's a figure or any kind of small vehicle. Now, when we talk about our large tanks, I don't normally do this, but for the sake of today's video, we're gonna be painting this little army man. First thing I like to do is get my airbrush set at about 20 PSI when I'm working with something small like this. And I start off with a solid coat of black. Once again, I'm using that Airbrush Colors black. Now, you can use your Apple Barrel black here, just make sure it's thinned out enough. I'm gonna make a second video just about thinning paint to use in your airbrush. But for the sake of this, I paint a ton of black, so I went on ahead and just ordered up one of these giant jars of pre-made black. After you have your model base coated all black, the next thing we're gonna do is take our white. Now what we're doing here, it's called a zenithal prime. What you're trying to do is replicate the sun hitting the model. What you want to do is spray from the top down like the sun is hitting it, and you're going to just do a nice even dusting over the whole model downward. What you'll see is it'll pick out those dark spots around the model where there will be shadows. They will come through and show up. Now after you finish this, we want to let that dry for a little bit. Now, good news about airbrushing is everything dries pretty quickly. After your model is all dry, we can start applying paint. Now, for this part, I'm gonna use my Apple Barrel Army Green color. When you go to Walmart, you can see there's 15 shades of green. Find one that's close enough for you. If you're really specific, you can look up what color is exactly the match to olive drab, but I just get one that was close. I believe for this model, I was using marsh green. I'm not 100% sure which one I used. I've got about 50 different colors of green at this point. But take a green that looks good, put that in a cup or into some type of a item where you can mix it in. I get these little cheap cups from the dollar store. They work really well. But yeah, get you, 2 drops of this is gonna be enough to paint the whole model. So put 2 drops in the bottom of the cup, Then take and drop about an equal amount of water in there. This is a very crucial spot. If you're going to use the cheap Apple Barrel or whoever's paint, it's just really thick. So we need to thin it out. If you put this right on your model out of the bottle, it's going to glob up, it's going to be gooey, it's going to just clog up all the details of it. So water it down. We're going to put that even powder water, we're going to stir that up in the cup. After we have it stirred up, the way I like to test this is drip a little bit on the side of the cup. If it runs down the side, you have it thin enough. If it just sticks in a big ball and sets there, you don't quite have it thin enough. Put another drop of water in, mix it up. When you start to put it there, you'll see that paint start to be able to flow around in the cup. Then you know you have it in just the right amount of liquid viscosity. Use all these big old words here. So once we have that how we like it, let's start painting our model. So let's pick out everything on the model that we want to be green. We're going to just do a nice light coat over all the green bits of the model. What you'll notice is you'll start seeing some of that white show through, and this is a great layer to kind of see where you want the lights, where you want the darks. A lot of guys can just do 1 or 2 layers of this and it's going to be good enough to look beautiful for the table. Now we're going to take this a little bit further today than normal, just for the fact of this video. But yeah, let's get all our greens around. So I picked out his jacket, his helmet, you know, all those green parts. Let that dry a little bit. Next thing we're going to do is take our brown. Now he's got leather coveralls and he's got some leather around his neck. So let's pick all that out with our dark chocolate brown. Same thing as before, we're going to water it down first, then put it onto the model nice and thin. As we pick out all those details, if you have a little bit run in between stuff, don't worry too much because we're going to wash this model. Now, if you're not going to do a wash, you do have to be very careful, but for right now, I'm just kind of slapping it in there as best as I can, trying not to make too much of a mess. After we finished the brown layers, I noticed that his collar should probably be a little bit different shade because this is more like a sheepskin or something. So I grabbed a lighter color brown and just put that around his collar and his shirt on the inside of this jacket. Just kind of helps give it a little extra color, pick out a few more details. The next thing to do is paint this little guy's face. Now for the face colors, I started with this really light color and it just didn't look right. So what I did is took that light color and a drop of dark brown, mixed it together, and it really gave me a good shade of skin color. After that, I just painted that over the face. Remember, the face details we want to preserve as much as we can. With this paint being as thin as it is, if you get a glob of paint in a couple sections, wipe your brush out, come back in and just dab a little bit of that off. It'll soak that paint up and keep those details looking really good. After that, we pretty much have the model all finished as far as our base coat. Now, this is an optional step, but it's one that I highly recommend. Now, the only time I'm going to kind of recommend you buy a very expensive paint is right now. These Citadel washes are some of the best I have ever used. We don't sell them here, but I'm just telling you, you can get them on Amazon. They're great. You want the Nun Oil and the Airbrush Earthshades. I use these two on almost every model I paint, and they really help a lot. So what I did is took that Airbrush Earthshade, which is just a dirt color, and I washed that over all of his clothing. The clothes, I put it on his face, I put it everywhere. Now be careful, you don't want a big pool of this on his face because it'll make his face look kind of weird. So just a light coat on the face, but on the jacket, put it on as thick as you want. On the clothes, put it on as thick as you want. And what you're gonna see is as this dries, everywhere that was pooling will leave a really dark brown spot. It really makes those shadows pop out. It makes the clothing look dirty. It really adds a lot to the model. The other cool thing I did is his lapel, or on the side of it, his uniform markings. We've left those gray this whole time. I'm gonna take a little dot of my Tamiya panel liner and just dot that inside of all those markings. This will basically paint itself right here. You'll see that stuff will run all around in there. and make that uniform marking look so good. I also, while I had that in my hand, took and dabbed that into some of the recesses of his trousers, some of the little details around the model, as far as like on his helmet, he's got these little X pieces that, I mean, it would be impossible to paint. But if you just dab that in there, it really pops them to life, makes it where you can really see them. The next thing I did was took my Nun oil, which is the black color of the Citadel paint, and I just washed that all over his hands. This is going to leave some nice colorations, and it's going to recess down into all the fingers and everywhere else. Just give it a nice tint to these black leather gloves. Really makes the model look good. After that, what we want to do is let all this set up and dry. So once it's dry, you'll see, I mean, it really is a good looking model at this point, but he's a little dark now. So what I'm going to do is take some of my original colors that I started with, and I'm going to put them into a clean palette and mix them up, thinned out. And we're going to put this on a kind of ratty, old, dirty brush. You don't want a brand new, really fine tipped one for this, because what we're going to do now is dry brush this model. After we have that on our brush, we're going to take and just lightly dust over top of all the different green parts with our fresh green. And what you'll see is that'll be a highlight layer, and it's going to bring up just that little bit extra to the outside of this model. All the dark recesses are going to get even darker. All the top layers are going to get even lighter. It's just going to make it really look good. Now, after you do this, if you want, you can actually add a little drop of white or a little drop of a lighter green. In my case, I used this neon green color that looks almost like zinc chromate for guys that do airplanes. Put a drop of that in my paint, and it really brought the brightness up. And I'm going to take and dust over the top of the whole green section again, the helmet, everywhere else. It just gives it that extra pop of color. Now that we've got that all done, we want to do the same thing to our brown. Now, for our dark brown section of his trousers and everywhere else, what I'm going to use is a light tan on this. The brown is so dark, I'm just going to go on and jump up to that tan and just dry brush this all over him again. And this really helps accentuate all the details on the model. You'll really see a model come to life when you start doing this part. Now, time for the worst part of a model to me. I am terrible at painting eyes, but I did pretty good on this guy. I took a drop of my bright white paint, put it on the smallest brush I have, and I took my evermost care to dot a little bit of white into each of his eyes. After that, I dried that off and got one tiny little speck of black to make his eyeballs with. And I went in there and touched each one of them one time just to make the eyes. If you end up getting a cross-eyed guy, just go on and paint over it with a little drop of white and start again. Every once in a while, you get lucky and you get it the first time, but I almost always have to paint the eyes 2 or 3 times to be happy with them. After that, guys, our little model is pretty much finished. I went around to all his little belt buckles and things also around it, and I just gave them a little touch of gold just to bring the little buckles and his clasps and stuff that are on him up to where you can see them. And it really came out great. I hope this was something that was instructional for you and got you to thinking about trying to paint one of these little minifigs. This is something you can use on any type of little toy soldier miniature you want. A great thing to practice on. Go get you a bin of plastic green army men. Paint those guys up. If you can make a little army of those guys look good, you'll be ready to paint any war figure coming up. And save some money, because let's not forget, this guy came with our kit. Here's a store-bought one. Now, I'll get some close-up shots of this, but you know, these store-bought figures are $30 a piece, whereas the ones that come with your tanks are free, and you can just spend that $30 to buy all your paint supplies and be able to make as many of these as you want going forward. Plus, there's something special about looking at the top of your tank and seeing a figure you painted versus something that you bought. I've really enjoyed this, and I hope you guys enjoy this too. Keep coming back here to Motion RC for more tips and tricks, some painting videos, and we will see you in the next video, whether it's land, sea, or air. See you later, guys. Bye.